Okay. Shalom Aleichem. It's Chaya again. Let's make sure we're good. Everyone can hear me? Excellent. Okay, so we're going to continue Be'ezer Hashem with what we started talking about a lot yesterday, concluding with the idea of Karpas. So we're holding Kadesh, where a person dedicates themselves, and then we're holding Yachatz, which is first comes the Gadlus, then comes the Madrega of Katnus, which is that we're reclaiming the place of questions, the place of Katnus, the place where there's a child, the place where there's an asking of questions, the place where there's a vegetation, and we dip it into salt water, not charoisis like the Shitta of the Rambam, specifically into salt water. So this also is reminding us of the idea of bitterness, the idea of tears, which in general, the whole idea of tears, which bechia comes from crying, comes from nevuchim ha'aretz. Nevuchim means that they were lost, wandering in confusion in the desert. So the idea of dima comes from also the dema, which is mixed up. So which means that we are in a place of confusion, of uncertainties, and of questions. This is the idea of Karpas. One other idea that we didn't talk about, but very quickly to discuss a little bit, is found in the Kadmonim, which is connected to the idea of the entire sale of Mechiras Yosef, which Mechiras Yosef is connected to Golus Mitzrayim. So already by the Brisbane Absorim, the pasuk says, "Yidei Ateda Kigeir Zaracha," that you'll know, Yidei Ateda, that you'll know that you'll be in a foreign land. Your descendants will descend into a stranger in a foreign land for 400 years. But Yidei Ateda, the oimek, the depth of what this means is that there'll be das. Das itself will be in a state of golus. That will be a state of exile of das. Like we spoke yesterday, that Melech Mitzrayim, with the 4 letters, is Gematria Das, and Erevav is Gematria Das, which means that there's a negative Das, that you're stuck in aggressive, in a manipulative, in a negative place. And the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is Bechinas of Das, is a tikkun for Chet Das, and Moshe brings the idea of Das and allows us to start experiencing our freedom. Now, the idea of Mechiras Yosef, the Medrash says, the Medrash in Medrash Tillim says, that the connection is that once it was Mechiras Yosef, then Klal Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael left and went down into Egypt. So the first time that we find something, the idea of dipping something into something else in a larger narrative, is a story with Mechiras Yosef, where they dip the coat of Yosef in blood after they sell him, and they want to go back to their father Yaakov and tell him that he was killed. So the story is that they dip his coat in the blood of a seer, which is similar to blood of a human, and they say that he was killed. Taraf Yosef, that Yosef was killed. So Rabbeinu Menoach writes in Achas Chaim, Hilchos Pesach, Leil Pesach, writes that the idea of Karpas is Kesoinas Pasim, which is also something later on that the Ben Ish Chai brings down in Shana Rishon Tzav, that the idea of Karpas is connected to the Kesoinas Pasim, that they dipped his coat in blood. So Hashem tells them, this is what the Medrash says, that you sold your brother into slavery, eventually you'll also be sold, you'll also be slaves into pirate, to Mitzrayim. So we begin the Seder by being reminded of this event. Now this event also has another parallel story, which is the second time we dip, which is in the story of the Karban Pesach itself. In the story of the Karban Pesach itself, we are asked to dip the blood, to dip the aziv, etc., into the blood, and then paste the blood to dip it into the blood, and then paste it on the doorsteps, on the doorposts. So that corresponds to the dip that caused the downfall of Klal Yisrael, or the entering into Mitzrayim, and then one is the Geula. So like we spoke yesterday, that in essence, every single aspect of the Haggadah, every single Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, every single aspect of itself is actually, could be seen as both part of the concealment, part of the question, part of the exile, part of the Golus, or it can also be seen part of the Geula, part already the process of redemption. Minei ubei, sometimes specifically from that same place of the exile and of the katnos, is the same place from which the geula, the redemption, starts to begin. So you have the same idea of the dipping, which caused a friction between the brothers, and the idea of the friction between the brothers means that the das is also lashon chibur. So the das of the chibur between the family was broken apart. So we start the Seder, which the Seder in general, like the Korban Pesach, is selabais. Selabais means that every single home has its own offering. So we bring dafka, the idea of the Seder is dafka to do with family. So it means that is creating a tikkun for the das that was broken apart. The das that was broken apart, the chibur that was broken apart in the family of Bnei Yaakov, when they sold their brother Yosef into Mitzrayim, which caused through the dipping. Now we start the dipping process, which is also both connected to an exile and to redemption. And we say now we're doing a tikkun for that, and we're starting the process of the redemption of the geula of that idea. So the geula starts again with the dipping. So the karpas is both an element that is connected with dafka, specifically with tears, with dafka going down to a place dafka going down to a place where things are concealed, and dafka the place where there's questions, and also connected to the beginning of the process of redemption. Okay, so this is generally, so we go from Kadesh. Kadesh, we're dedicating ourselves, we're connecting to the idea of Chachma, the idea of Gadlus, Gadlus Rishon, Gadlus Sheni. We're in a place of Gadlus. We act like Gadlus, we act like in greatness, and therefore we do also Urchatz, which we said Urchatz is the Derech HaMalachim, the people. It's the path of the people that are free, and Derech Cheres. It's also the derech of a person, the path of a person that is acting in a level of Kiddusha, like not according to Shittas HaTosfos, that's when we wash our hands. So we're doing all these practices to say that we're in a state of balance. Next comes the idea of Yachatz. So you have Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, and now comes the idea of Yachatz. So like we mentioned last time, a few times ago, in the Rambam himself, when the Rambam writes the halachas of Hilchos Pesach, the Seder Hilchos Pesach, the order of the events, the order of the evening, so the Rambam doesn't have Yachatz at this point. When does the Rambam say that a person should break the matzah? So you have a prusa, you have a broken matzah. So the Rambam holds that the prusa you break the matzah right before you make hamotzei lechem min haaretz. Now the minig Yisrael is, and this is the way we practice, that we break the matzah right at this juncture. Why do we break the matzah at this point? Why do we do Yachatz right over here? What's the reason? So if you look at the Gemara, you'll see that the Gemara tells us that matzah is called lechem oini. Right? Matzah is called lechem oini. Why is matzah called lechem oini? What's the reason why matzah is called lechem oini? So the Gemara in Pesachim Kuf Tes Vav writes 3 reasons. Amar Shmuel. Why is matzah called lechem oini? So lechem sha'oinim al dvarim harbe. It's bread that we speak a lot of words, upon this bread. Which means that we're going to say the Haggadah. Sha'oinim al dvarim harbe, lots of words are going to be spoken about. That's why we call matzah lechem oini. So oini, the word oini is not poor, but oinim, from the language of response. Lechem sha'oinim alav. That's the first interpretation. Davar achar, lechem oini. Why is it called a lechem oini? Oniksiv. that you should read the word as ani, poor man, not oni from the word response, but from the word poor. Ma ani shedarke beprusa, avkam beprusa. Just like a poor man eats broken bread, that his bread is not complete. He eats bread that's broken. The same thing also, the ani eats broken bread. Avkam prusa, so therefore, on Pesach night, we have to have a broken bread, which means, like Tosfos explains, which means that normally we have two shlemas, we have two full matzah. When you make lechem misha on Shabbos, or also on Yom Tov, like Tosfos explains, you generally have two complete chalas. On Pesach, we have to have a prusa. And that's a machlokes of Rishonim. It's a big argument between the Rishonim, between the Riv and the Rambam, etc., whether this means that you should have two full matzah and one broken matzah, or you should only have two matzahs at all, one full, one complete. Minig Yisrael today, most people's custom is, like most of the Rishonim, is that we have three matzah and we have one broken matzah on the plate. So this is the Avkam B'Prusa. The third answer is Ma Darka Shaloni Hu Masik V'Ishta Eifa. That's like a poor man because they don't have he doesn't have a lot of time on his hands. He's kneading the bread and his wife is right away baking it. The same thing also Hu Masik V'Ishta Eifa. The same thing also his bread is baked very quickly. Okay, so we have two basic reasons why matzah is called lechem oini, or oini from the word responding, or oini from the word poor. Now, comes along the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch Taf Ayin Gimel Siman Lamed Vav, and the Alter Rebbe explains why the Minig Yisrael, the custom amongst Israel, the general custom is why we break the Yachatz before we say the Haggadah. What's the reason? So it says like this: which you break the matzah, the middle matzah, which we'll talk soon why specifically the middle matzah. You take the middle matzah, you put it back between the two full matzahs. Kidei loimer ha'Haggadah. In order to say the Haggadah, why? Because you're supposed to say the Haggadah on a matzah that you fulfill the obligation of eating on Pesach. And that's the Dar Chazal, our sages tell us that it's called lechem oini she'oinu l'dvarim harbe. It's called lechem oini, meaning bread of response, which means we say a lot of words on this matzah. Also, Chazal tell us, lechem ani, ma darke shalni beprusa, just like the nature of a poor man is that he eats or she eats broken bread. The same thing also, avkam beprusa, the same thing also with prusa. So what the Alter Rebbe is basically saying is that because Chazal, because our sages teach us two reasons why matzah is called lechem ani. One is because it's oinim al advarim harbe, we respond many things to it. The second thing is because darke shalani beprusa, the nature of a poor person is to eat broken bread. So the Alter Rebbe says, so therefore we'll do both. We'll fulfill our obligation according to both shittas. How will we yotze both opinions? You'll break the matzah before you start the Haggadah. So you have oinim al advarim harbe. You'll have a matzah that you're going to say a lot of things upon it. And it's also going to be a matzah that's already a prusa, that's broken, because ma darke shalani beprusa, just like the nature of a poor person is to eat a broken matzah. So you'll fulfill both obligations. You'll fulfill the obligation of saying a lot of words on a broken matzah. Now the Rambam doesn't have to learn that you have to be yotze both opinions. So therefore the Rambam says you just have to eat a broken matzah. And you don't need dvarim harbe that you have to respond. But this is the reason why we actually break the matzah before we start saying this Haggadah. Okay. So which matzah do we break? We have three matzahs. What's the three matzah? The three matzah, like the Arizal writes, the Arizal writes in Pritz Chaim and also Shar Kavanas, the three matzahs correspond to, from below to above, is Yisrael, Levi, Kohen. Yisrael, Levi, Kohen. So Yisrael is the Israelite, so Yisrael is the bottom matzah. the Levi corresponds to the middle matzah, and the Kohen corresponds to the upper matzah. It also corresponds in the Sfirot. The lower matzah is das, corresponds to the midah of das, the attribute of das, and therefore what you're going to do, what you're going to perform with this third matzah is you're going to create a sandwich, which is bringing together, which we'll talk later, the idea of matzah and mar and Pesach, bringing everything together in this tremendous sweetening sandwich that brings both redemption and exile together as one and is being eaten. This is the idea of das. The das is the chibur, so that's the third matzah, the lower matzah. The middle matzah is connected to bina, and the top matzah is connected to chachma. So chachma, bina, das, or kohen, levi, yisrael. Kohen, levi, yisrael spells the words kli, a vessel. Kohen, levi, yisrael, but when you do it upwards from yisrael, levi, kohen, you have the word yelech, which is movement, progress. So the whole idea of the Seder is yelech. It's a halacha. It's a movement. So which matzah do you break? You have three matzahs. Which matzah do you break? So let's discuss the halachic issue, the basic shot level, why we break the matzah. So the opinion of the Rosh and the Gos Maimonides, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch and the Torah rule in Taf Ayin Gimel is, you break the middle matzah. Why do you break the middle matzah? Because there's a principle of ein mavir ala mitzvos. The principle is ein mavir ala mitzvos. Since the principle is ein mavir ala mitzvos, Schari, do you hear me? Because something just went a little, okay. Since the principle is ein mavir ala mitzvos, you don't pass over the mitzvos. So what we do is, and we're going to need to make a bracha ala chilas matzah on the mitzvah of eating the matzah later on in the Seder. So since ein mavir ala mitzvahs, so what we'll do is, when you're going to want to make a bracha, you're going to break on a shalem, on a complete matzah, and also a half a matzah. So you're going to want to break the second matzah, not the first matzah. So you'll keep the first matzah for later. So when you're going to make achilas matzah, you'll be able to make achilas matzah and a moitzi and achilas matzah on a full and a half matzah. So ein mavir ala mitzvos. That's the shita of the Rosh, the Gos Maimonides, and that's what the Torah Shulchan Aruch rule. And that's the common custom. You break the second matzah, not the first one, because ein mavir ala mitzvos. The Smag and the Rekeach actually hold that you break the upper matzah for that same reason, because ein mavir ala mitzvah, so you don't want to pass over a mitzvah, and it's a mitzvah to break the matzah, so you break the top matzah. But that's not la halacha, and that's because it's not mamash a mitzvah to break that matzah. Okay, so here you're breaking the middle matzah. This is the technical reason why we're breaking the middle matzah. In general, before we get to why the second matzah, why we're going to break the second matzah, and what the idea of breaking is, let's just say very quickly that on one level, the idea of Yachatz, of breaking, represents brokenness. And this is a pre-verbal brokenness, like a very, very deep, traumatic brokenness that's even pre-verbal, because we don't have Magid yet, which is going to begin the redemption of speech. So you have Kaddish, which is the beginning of High. Then we go back to Katnus, which is Urchat, Karpas, Yachatz. So it represents the idea of the brokenness that is in need, that is in yearning for shleimus, for completion. That's what Yachatz in general, Api Remez, represents. There's also, like we said, every single thing has its opposite. So there's also the advantage, or the Maila, the positive quality of Yachatz, which we spoke a little bit very quickly earlier, that the idea of the Seder is to transcend Seder. Because if you're in a perfect order of things, and one thing leads to the next, you can never really reach a real state of ultimate freedom, because freedom has to be the ilo, not the alo, has to be the cause, not the effect. If you're in effect of another cause, you're never totally free, because you're always dependent on the original cause. And the idea of the Seder night is to get to a place l'mayla m'derech hishtalshelus, beyond hishtalshelus. So the idea of to get to the place of the cause, the original cause, to the Ein Sof. So therefore, we take a circle, which a matzah is a circle. This is the positive element of the breaking. And we break it apart, saying that we're going to transcend even this circle, which the whole idea of the kair is also a circle, and to get beyond the circle. That's one idea. The other interesting idea, which is mentioned in Das Kein and Toisus in Shmois, Yudbeis, and the Kaf HaChaim breaks it down, that the breaking of the matzah is also symbolic of Kriyas Yamsuf. So it's somehow a breaking open of something. It's not a breaking of something, but it's on the contrary. It's a breaking open of something else. Okay, so this is we'll get to it, but this is the way to see it as an advantage, as a positive thing. Let's talk about it in the way it's basically understood, which is the idea of Yachatz, which represents the idea of brokenness. So which matzah do we take? According to the Arizal, we're going to take the matzah that's connected to the tribe, the Shevet of Levi, right? You have Yisrael, Levi, and on top you have the Kohen. So the Levi, the Shevet Levi is very interesting because the Shevet Levi were actually not in Galus Mitzrayim. They were not enslaved in Egypt. Yet, this is the matzah specifically that we break, because the matzah that we break represents, which we'll see soon, represents in the letters of the name of Hashem. It's going to represent the Vav, the Dalet, and the Vav, which creates the letter Hey, which let's say very quickly, which is going to represent Zarampin and Malchus, which in simple letters it means the redemption and the concealment. So Levi represents a tribe, a Shevet, that on one hand were transcendent of exile. They were not part of Galus Mitzrayim. On the other hand, the Shalach Kadosh writes that if you look at the names of Bnei Levi, which is Gershon, Kahassim, Merari, you'll see that those three names are specifically connected to Galus Mitzrayim, to the exile of Mitzrayim. Because Gershon comes from the word Ger, which means I'm a foreigner, I'm a stranger, I don't belong here. Kahas comes from the word to blunt out, like Akei or Shinav, which we're going to talk later, which talks about the Rasha, we have to blunt out his teeth. So it means that we're blunted, our teeth are blunted out from the hardship. And Merari literally comes from the word Mariris, comes from the word of bitterness. So you have in the children of the Shevet Levi, of Levi himself, we have the idea, encoded the idea that's connected to Galus, to the exile of Mitzrayim. So we take the idea of Levi. Levi generally is connected to Gevura. Like Kohen is connected to Chesed, Levi, the Shevet Levi, is connected to Gvura of Avodah Levi Hu. It's avoided dafka with music and sound. It's connected with Gvura, with a lot of passion. And Yisrael is connected to Tiferes. So what we do is we take the matzah that's connected to Gevura, and the matzah that's connected to Gevura we break apart. Now the idea is we create Yachatz. We're breaking apart. Leivik, the Rebbe's father, writes in Agon on the Zohar something sweet. He says that the word Yachatz is gematria of 108, which is exactly half of 216, which is Gevura. So half of 216, Yachatz, you take Gevura itself and you break it in half, you have Yachatz, which is okay. So this is connected to Levi, and also connected, of course, to when you have Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. Avram is connected to the highest matzah, which is Chesed, and also connected to Chachma. Then the second matzah is connected to Yitzchak and to Levi. The third matzah is connected to Yisrael and to Yaakov. The word lechem oini, which we said means poor man's bread, or bread she'oinu lo dvarim harbe, is 208, which is also the gematria of the name Yitzchak. Okay, so this is what we do with the second matzah. So the reason why we're doing it with the second matzah is specifically because it's connected to Levi, connected to Yitzchak, connected to Gevura. And we said in Gevura they have katnas. We're breaking things apart in a place of brokenness. How do we actually break the matzah? So the Arizal writes, the way we break the matzah is you do this. So the Arizal writes, you take this is what the Torah Shulchan Aruch rules. You take the middle matzah and you break it into half, and you take one part of the matzah and you put it away for the afikomen. The second, so how is it actually broken? you break it in a way that it resembles the letter of a dalid and a vav. So you have one part of the matzah looks like this. You crack it like this, something like that. And then you'll have like a dalid from one, and you'll have a letter vav on the other one. Together, if you take that matzah, that broken matzah, the middle matzah, you actually have the letter hey, right? So if you have a dalid, the shape of your half, 3/4 of your matzah, the bigger shape is connected like the letter dalid, together with the little left suspended leg, you would actually have the letter hey. What's the letter hey? So hey is again connected to chachma's yud. So the Arizal said, therefore, Chachma, which is the higher level of matzah, the first level of matzah, you don't break. Yud is not broken. Yud cannot be broken. So that's the top matzah. That's the shalom. The Hey is a letter that's actually broken in half, right? Hey and Ches are the only two letters. I'm sorry, Hey and Kuf are the only two letters in the 22 letters of the Aleph Beis that are actually created with two forms, with two separate formations. You have one part of the letter and another part of the letter is suspended from it. So the idea is itself gevura, and hey is really a broken ches. So when you have chametz, the difference between chametz and matzah is chametz and matzah have the same letters. There's the difference between the chametz and matzah is a chametz is with a ches and matzah is with a hey. So what you're doing is you're breaking the ches, you're breaking the klippa of the chametz to create the letter of hey, which itself is in gevura. Then you take that piece of matzah, which you're going to put away for the afikomen, which we'll talk soon in a moment, what we actually do for the afikomen. You take that piece of matzah and you then break it into 5 more pieces. So the hay itself, the matzah that has now a daled and a vav, which corresponds to the letter hay, you take that daled letter, which is the letter that you're going to eat for the afikomen, and you break it into 5 gevuras. There's Gevura of Chesed, Gevura of Gur, Gevura of Tiferes, Gevura of Netzach, Gevura of Hod. So these correspond to the 5 levels of Gevuras, which corresponds to the 5 senses, and etc. So this is like breaking it down even further, reducing the matzah and breaking the Gevuras. This is what we do with the matzah. What do we do with the actual matzah, the bigger matzah? So the Shulchan Aruch says, "V'noisel noisel tachas hamapa zeichel v'shesem tzuras v'selamoisel." You hide the matzah. You put it away. You do it for a shmira. You put it away simply. So one reason that the kol boy brings that you put it away is so you should protect it, that you should have it for later for the afikomen. Another reason that the Torah seems to bring down is so it should arouse suspicion of the children, so they should ask the question. Chaim Brisker says it has to do with afikomen. It's connected with the mitzvah of Karpas Pesach, which needed a particular shmir, a particular protection, but you're protecting it. Then there's an interesting Gemara. The Gemara in Pesachim says like this. In Daf Kuf Tes Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, Choit fi matzah. The Gemara says that it says Choit fi matzah, which means you grab matzah on the night of Pesach. So the Gemara says that you do this so the children should not fall asleep. What is Choit fi matzah? So the Rashbam writes that Choit fi matzah means that you eat very quickly. Choit fi means that you eat the matzah very quickly, which means you do it earlier. However, the Rambam again in Perek Zayin Halacha Gimel, when he talks about Choit fi matzah, the Rambam actually says that the word Choitvim actually comes from the word to grab. So not to eat quickly, which is like what the Rashbam holds, and it's most of the Rishonim hold, but Choitvim has to do something with grabbing. Because the Rambam writes that the Choitvim matzah zeh miyad zeh. Each person, we grab matzah from each other. And so Choitvim has to do actually with grabbing. You grab matzah. Says the Chok Yaakov, that from there we see from Eliyahu Rabbah that Efshem Zem Spashtam Minik Shemanichim Lekidlikas Medinas Eil Lachte Hafikoyim. This is the makar, the source for this minhag to actually grab the matzah. So we're not going to call it steal the matzah, because you don't want to steal, and you don't want to raise children to steal on Pesach night, but sort of like a trick. You hide the matzah, like more like a hiding or seek game. You hide the matzah, and they have to find the matzah. And what's the idea to find the matzah? Finding Afikomen and giving them a gift, so they stay up later to eat the matzah later on. Now, it's there's a mock-up. Some people bring a source for this, where it speaks about the bracha of Yaakov with Yaakov and Esav. That Yaakov takes the bracha, says "Ba'achicha b'mirma," that your brother came with trickery, and he took the blessing. So it was brought down that the word Afikomen, the b'mirma, is 287. Has the same numeric value, has the same gematria. And the Psikta and the Pirkei Belez actually writes that the story of Yaakov receiving the brachas from Yitzchak on that night actually happened on Pesach night. Okay, so this is maybe a little bit more a mocker for this idea to do something b'mirma, with more like trickery. Again, not to chas v'shalom steal, and not to this, but more like a game of hiding and finding. Okay, this is the idea of chayt v'mata, which comes from the Rambam Shita, the opinion of the Rambam. Not that it means to eat quickly, but it has to do with grabbing or grabbing it. Okay. Now, Alpi Pnimius, we'll talk about this in a few shlavim, a few levels. The first level is we say that the broken matzah, the Yachatz, so we're saying represents the idea of brokenness, of splitting, of something that's broken, connected to the Gevuras, connected to Bina, connected to Levi, connected to Yitzchak, connected to something that's connected to Gevura. This, on the deepest cosmic level, the idea of the broken or the splitting apart has to do with the Nesira. This goes before the Tzimtzum. There's a Nesira, and the Nesira is splitting apart. We'll say more. We'll say the Tzimtzum. So the Tzimtzum is a splitting apart. There's the Ein Sof, that's a Malamok Machal that fills all space, all conceptual space. There's no space, but all conceptual space. And then there's a Tzimtzum. There's a Tzimtzum. There's a Koyach HaGvuli. Just like Hashem has a potential of infinity that can express itself infinitely, the same Hashem can reveal himself in the Koyach HaGvul. Koyach HaGvul is the potential where something is concealed, something is potentially concealed and revealed as only finite. So there's in the Bria itself, there's the way the world exists pre-Tzimtzum or beyond Tzimtzum, which is that Tzimtzum is not kipshuta, is not literal, and really everything is atzmas alakos. And then there's the post-Tzimtzum, or mitzidenu, from our perspective, the way we perceive the world, which is that there is a Tzimtzum, there's a concealment of, and there's a brokenness in this world. So what the idea of the child, we say it's more like a game, that we hide the half a matzah, and the children are trying to find that half a matzah to bring it back to us. What the children are really doing is the children are revealing that the entire idea of a tzimtzum is only a game. That's what they're revealing. They're revealing that the entire idea that there is a tzimtzum and there is gevura is just really is that's a game, like the famous mashal, the famous metaphor with the story with the Magid, with his son, Rav Malach, and his son was once playing a game of hide and go seek, and he hid in a very good location, and he hid in such a good location that his friends gave up on him. They couldn't find him any longer. And many hours later, his son came to his father, the Magid, and he was crying. And his father asked him, "Why are you crying?" He said, "Because I was playing a game of hide and go seek, and I hid in a very good location, and no one found me." So his father said, "No, son, so you won the game. That's the kavanah of the game. That's the intention of the game, that you should hide in a good place." He said, "Yeah, but they stopped looking for me. They stopped even looking for me." So the Maggid went into big dvekus, and he said, "This is taka. This is really the story of the creation. That Hashem goes into hiding of seek, their game of to hide. But the tachlis of the hiding of the seek is that we should seek. And how sad it is for Hashem, for the Eibishter Kaviyachol, when we stop looking for it. So it's a game. And on a more personal level, the idea of retrieving of the Afikoimen represents there's a certain brokenness of Yachatz that's already pre-verbal, that's even pre-verbal, not already, that's pre-verbal. Sometimes a brokenness that a person has in their own life that goes back to life traumas or things that are very broken, or we can say this even happens once post-verbal, but it's so deep that there's no way to express it. Which we'll see soon that the entire idea of Magid is a redemption, is the Geula of Dibur, because the whole idea of Mitzrayim is Golas Dibur, where we became so traumatized and so stuck in our slavery, in our condition, in our katnus, that we couldn't even weren't able to express the possibility of our freedom. So the idea of the child finding the Afikoimen and bringing back the Afikoimen is the idea of the child within us, the deep innocence within us, reclaiming something that was broken even in a pre-verbal state, and then bringing it to us back at the end of the Seder after we do a sweetening of the Mor and the Mavas, and we've been able to create a tremendous tikkun for everything that we have in our life. It's the child within us, or the child that we have, our children that we have, that is able to bring shleimus in the person's life. This is generally the idea of Yachatz. And now we have to move into the idea of Magid. So Magid is going to be the thrust of the entire Haggadah, which we're going to speak. And Haggadah, it can be either Haggadah or Agadah. There's a Lashon, Lashon the Mordechai, they says that it's called Agadah. But that the idea, Agadah is Lashon, something that's Moishech Kelev K'Agadas, that it's drawing forth. That the idea of the Agadah, the Arizal writes that we have to say the Agadah with a loud voice, with a confident voice, with great joy. Later, the Shalom Kaddish writes that it means that we have to also do it with tremendous ava, yira, and trepidation and fear, but also tremendous joy, because like the Zohar Kaddish tells us in the beginning of Shmois, the Zohar says that on Pesach night, when a person sits down by the Seder, the Eibishter, the Pamal Yishaloi, and all the Malachim come to hear the offerings of the pleasure of the singing of Klal Yisrael. So the Haggadah has to be done with a very serious posture. What are we doing in the Haggadah? What's the mitzvah of the Haggadah? The mitzvah of the Haggadah is specifically for Pesach night is to speak it. L'saper b'tzias Mitzrayim. Like the Rambam writes in Halacha that the mitzvah says l'saper b'tzias Mitzrayim, to speak the words of the Haggadah. Tonight, the main idea is to speak it, because we're going to talk, God willing, maybe tomorrow, that the whole idea of Mitzrayim is Golas HaDibur, and we have to bring Geula to the Dibur. And ultimately, we bring Golas HaDibur until we reach the level of Mashiach, which is a Messiah, the ultimate speaker. So let's start off very slowly, and then Be'ez Hashem will continue tomorrow more bariches. So, like we said, the word Haggadah is the Gemara says in Chagiga, which means the Haggadah is to draw it out. So Haggadah is to say, and it's also Haggadah connected to Megadim, which is like sweetening of things. It's a process of sweetening through speech, sweetening our condition, and b'chol yom v'yom b'chol dor v'dor chayv liras l'haris atzmi kilu yotzim mitzrayim. We have to experience Yitzias Mitzrayim in the Leila Seder. So it's a process of excavating and drawing forth from within our deeper resources to bring redemption through our speech, and the Gula through speech. So we're gonna, okay, you know what, we'll do this tomorrow. Be'ez Hashem, we'll start. We'll take the Chumash, Mitzvah tomorrow, we'll start from Parsha Shema. So we'll take a Chumash, and we're going to go through some of the psukim to show you how Klal Yisrael was in a state of Golus Adibur, and how there has to be a Geulas Adibur, a redemption of speech, and how Magid brings about the full redemption of speech, and how Magid brings about the Geula of the person, brings redemption, and then once a person is redeemed, we can go ahead and we can also already eat the matzah and the mar, etc., etc. Okay, so we'll continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow night.
I don't know if the Rav wants to take any questions, but
We'll take a few questions for sure.
if anybody wants to raise their hand, it should be in the bottom left, I believe. If you want to raise your hand. Rav Yonah has a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned briefly earlier some shitas about ein ma'avirin mala mitzvos.
Yeah.
And I was trying to understand, and then it moved on.
Okay.
Were they for the shita of the top matzah and the bottom matzah?
Oh, so that's the shaila. So we hold ein ma'avirin mala mitzvos, which we said is the shitas harash b'shulchan aruch b'fri paskin and the Kos Maimonides. So we'll say, what is the mitzvah on Pesach night? The mitzvah is matzah. Yachatz, like we said, the Rambam doesn't even do Yachatz. He just does Yachatz right before. So he'll say that what's the real mitzvah to make it on a shalim and a prusa. So keep the top shalim and break the middle matzah. And that's going to be our shitta. There is a shitta, which we said, the Baal Rekech, and others say that, no, wait a second. My dakish on the prusa is also part of the custom of the way we're going to celebrate Pesach night. So you can consider it like a mitzvah. It's not really a mitzvah, but you consider it a mitzvah to say lechem oynish alam dvorim harbe on a prusa. So therefore, which matzah should you break? Break the top matzah. So those Rishonim say you break the top matzah. We paskin that we break the middle matzah, and that is what the Arizal, Rabbeinu Arizal will write, is connected to Yitzchak, connected to Levi, connected to Gvuras, which works much better in the system in terms of what we want to achieve.
So it wouldn't be a havara it's not a havara because you're not counting, you're not moving from one to the other?
No, because they'll say that's not really a mitzvah. They'll say you're not really passing over a mitzvah to break the matzah. It's not a mitzvah.
Right.
It's a custom. It's a minhag to have the dark process. Okay, so it's not a mitzvah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have another question from Binyamin Solomon.
Yeah. I can't hear. You can hear?
Can you speak a little bit more about the breaking of the middle matzah, and the middle matzah specifically representing Yitzchak, why Yitzchak as opposed to Abraham or Yaakov?
Okay, so there's something about that. Yitzchak is connected to the world of Gvura, and Avraham is connected to Chesed, and Yaakov is connected to Tiferes. So, and basically, the difference between Chesed and Gvura and Tiferes is Chesed is a posture of Yichud. It's always one. Tiferes is actually a combination of many that become one. That's what something that's beautiful is. So you're taking a multiplicity of different things and you're creating like a harmony of ideas, which becomes something that's beautiful. That's the definition of Tiferes. Gevura, by definition, means something that is holding back, that is restricting. So the entire idea of Gevura itself is din, is judgment, is brokenness. Now, in its highest conception, Yitzchak is connected to Gevura, which is the koyach hagvul in the Ein Sof, which over there you can't consider it a chesar, you can't consider that something that's a lack. But in our experience, the way we experience something, if something is not given to us or we don't have it, we perceive it as something that's broken from us or separated from us. So this is the general idea of Gevura connected to din. So therefore, the Arizal says we're gonna break that matzah of din, and again, there's also going to be a tikkun for that eventually, because we're going to eventually eat the entire matzah, and it's going to be the most davar shalom. The most davar shalom is actually the letter hey. So you have ches, which is a letter that's a shalom letter, but that actually inflates. That's connected to chametz. And dafka hey, which is humility and brokenness, is actually something that reaches a higher madrega. But it's the brokenness, the yachatz, the humility, the brokenness, the katnos, that will allow us to reach even a higher level of godless. So that's the idea of the Gevurah.
I think we have one last question from Shlomo.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, in a certain way, Tiferes is only within us, meaning the matzah outside will remain broken, but within our belly, in a certain way, it actually is unified in our digestive tract. Is there something?
What's wrong, Chuck? Why? Because you don't break it? What do you mean?
You eat it, then within us, in our insides, in our innards, we're unifying it. It becomes unified again.
Oh, but it's always like that. What do you mean? I'm not. Why dafka Tiferes? Everything, all the matzah becomes like that. No.
Yeah, but I'm saying the Yachatz, it's only externally.
You're talking about Yachatz as Gevurah, the middle matzah.
Could it become like processing and progressing to another stage?
Yes, you're right. So afikoiman actually comes from the word afikoiman is actually an Aramaic word for dessert, for like for something that's sweet, like a sweetening. So eventually there's going to be a sweetening. This is the whole tachlis of everything is going to be eventually for the sweetening of all the gevuras. Like we'll talk with morer. Morer you're going to chew in such a way that Rizal is going to say until it becomes sweet. You always have to get to the place of the tikkun, which is the sweetening. Because you're going from the gevura, the katnus is always to get us back to a place of godless. But we start off from godless to recognize where we are, who we are, what's our possibility. Then we go back into katnus without getting lost in the katnus. So we can actually integrate the katnus and bring us to a higher level of godless. Because if we just ignore part of ourselves, ignore parts of ourselves that are still broken and still not complete, and say, oh, we're at Tzaddik Gomer, we're in a higher place. The bottom line is the lower parts are going to resurface with a vengeance. So we start off the highest level. Then we go back into the lower levels and we reintegrate the lower levels until we get to the place of Hala Nirtza. But that's the ultimate tikkun. So we're moving towards that place. Always moving towards that place.
If the Rav has time, there's one more question from Harry.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing before. Tomorrow, I know it's not part of the sheets, so just bring a chumash. I'll be kedai to go through a little bit of psukim, and then we're going to try to get to what the Indian of Magid is. So there's no, you can bring a Agoda, but the halacha is a very small amount of what we have to learn. So we'll go through the chumash. Yeah, what's the shaila?
Rav, you mentioned very briefly that the middle matzah connects to the Zer, Anpin, and Malchus.
Yeah.
I would think it connects to Ima, which was being a Gvura. Why does it connect? Can you explain a little bit more why it connects to Zer, Anpin, and Malchus?
So these are all within all the matzah is connected to Moichin da Abba. Like I think I mentioned yesterday. Within Moichin da Abba itself, there's madregas within every single madrega. It's like a holographic image. So everything has within it all the different madregas. So within that level itself, the two parts of the matzah, the one part is that is more complete versus the one part that's a little more smaller. And everything lefi erech, something that's bigger is always considered something that's shalom. Something that's smaller is always considered something that's broken from that bigger part is always something considered that's a chesed. So that's always going to be like the Yisoida Malchus, the Zohar Ampen and Malchus. And the matzah itself, in that itself, has the Dalid and the Vav, which corresponds to the Yud, to the letter Hey. But of course, in its whole structure, it's Yud is the top matzah and Hey is the middle matzah. And if you break it in half, you'll have the Dalid in one part and the Hey, the Vav in the second part.
If the Rav has time, there's one more question from Rav Shlomo again.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, so going back to the consumption of the matzah and becoming unified within,
yeah.
The Rav had said yesterday in Gemara Sanhedrin, one of the materials that had been suggested to have been the itadas was the bread.
Right.
So, in effect, we're reversing the effect. Meaning we're getting back regardless to the same thing that we messed up with.
Amos. By the way, this you do every Friday night also. Every time we make Kiddush. The reason why we make Kiddush on wine and then we eat challah throughout the year is a tikkun v'chet etzadas. That's why when we say Savri Moranon, some people Sfardim have the custom to say L'chaim. Or even Savri Moranon. Why are we saying Savri Moranon? What's in the game of Savri Moranon? What are we telling people? We're saying Savri Moranon means listen, people. Now we're going to take the same object that brought our downfall, the Chet Etzadas, and we're going to do a tikkun for that Chet Etzadas. And that's when we say Savri Moranon, people respond L'chaim. This should be not L'chas Hashem L'mavas. This is not to be the Chet Etzadas that brought the opposite of this, but this should bring L'chaim. So L'chaim Eden, today is Shchodesh Nissen, Shchodesh Agula. The Shmoyer is a Chodesh Aviv. So the Ramban holds that there's a mitzvah in Torah to remember on a Shchodesh Nissen, the Gula. And like we say, Yachal Rosh Chodesh, Tamaloi Marimahu, but there's Yachal Rosh Chodesh. We think that we should already start the redemption from Rosh Chodesh. So it's Chodesh Agula, the Eibush Shelf, we should all have a Gula Pratis and a Gula Klolis. And we should see the Gula Mikdash Hashem and Meir V'Yameinu.
Everyone tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem. I'll post the link to the shiurim.
Perfect.
Tomorrow.
Okay, like